Hey again, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Experience Maker live show. My name is Dan Gingiss, the Experience Maker. I'm a customer experience keynote speaker, coach, author, and podcaster. And we are here every week with amazing folks in the customer experience industry, thought leaders, experts, practitioners, all to bring you amazing content and learning. So happy that you are here. I wanted to make sure that everybody knew about my 10-day CX challenge. If you haven't done it yet, please go to 10daycxchallenge.com. Every day you're going to get a 90-second video from me, just 90 seconds, that is going to give you a great tactic that you can start executing in your business today or tomorrow if you watch the video tomorrow. But grab the team. It's a great team building activity and such a great way to get moving on that cultural shift that's really necessary to embed customer experience into your business. Another great way to start changing the culture in your business is to talk to a guy like my guest here today. I met Shawn Nason a couple months ago, a year ago, maybe at this point, and we've engaged a number of times. We've hung out together. We have chatted about the future of customer experience, and you can't not get excited when you talk to Shawn. Shawn is formerly a Disney Imagineer. He is now the Chief Experience Officer of MOFI, his own consultancy that is described as a human-obsessed boutique design firm passionate about reimagining experience ecosystems. Ladies and gentlemen, he's the man on fire himself. Welcome, Shawn, to the show. How you doing, man?
Hey, buddy. How are you doing?
I've been looking forward to this one for a while because you and I always have so much fun when we chat, and Absolutely. I'm really honored to have you on the show.
Love it. Love it. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. I know you're traveling. You are in a hotel room, so thank you for taking time out while you're busy traveling.
Don't you love my beautiful background like yours, Dan?
Yes, I know your home studio usually looks a little bit better than your background in a hotel, but all good. So, Shawn, tell us about you and your background and what you're doing now.
Yeah. So, first off, Dan, I want to say congratulations again on the book.
Thank you.
And how amazing it's done. And for all of the people listening to this, if you haven't read it, go read it. I was really privileged to get a pre-copy of it and have read it and taken notes. So thank you again, Dan, for putting that out to the world for what it is. And yeah, a little bit about me. Dan mentioned it. So I'll give my 30-second bio. Musician turned pastor, turned finance person, turned CX innovation maker. And in that journey ended up, as Dan said, working for the Walt Disney Company, worked for Disney Cruise Line, and then became a Walt Disney Imagineer. And what's so powerful about that, it is really where I learned how the intersection of experience happens and what we call at MOFI an experience ecosystem. And that people say, what was Disney's secret sauce? It's that they put experience number one all the time. All the time. They put the guests number one. They put the cast members number one. And so when I got moved into the world of healthcare, which was a great logical step in the career, right? You go from being a Walt Disney Imagineer to working for a major insurer in our country. I took that passion along, and I'm still passionate about that today.
And I should say that Shawn and I worked for the same major insurer. I can't remember whether we were there at the same time or not. I think
we were crossing over right as I was leaving. You came in, Dan.
Gotcha. I got you. Well, hey, I went from healthcare to fast food. So, also an interesting transition.
I'm sure our previous employer at the healthcare would be like, fast food? Really, Dan?
Exactly. Yes. You couldn't go farther away. So tell me about the man on fire persona. Obviously, you worked it into the name of your company. Where did this come from?
Yeah. So honestly, in one of those stints that when I left the healthcare world, I made the next logical career move. I became a chief innovation officer for a higher education institute. I don't know how many of you have ever tried to do that, but it's not the easiest job in the world. And in my journey there, and I'll give this tidbit for an experience realm, know who your audience is and know them well. So I was new to Chief Innovation Officer at this institute. First weekend, I mean, if you know anything about higher ed, you have the faculty and then you have staff and administration. And in this room, 95% were faculty and 5% were staff and administration. And someone at the very end of the session raised their hand and said, Shawn, what's the first thing you would do to change the experience and innovate in higher education? And I have this issue sometimes, Dan, of not being able to filter what I'm saying when I'm thinking
One
it.
of the things I love about you, man.
And I said I would do away with tenure. 95% of the people in that room had tenure.
Mm-hmm. Probably didn't like that answer.
Yeah, they did not like that answer. And so through that whole ordeal, we did make some amazing, not just national, but global news. We were the first university to launch a full-scale maker movement across the whole city. And an article was written about me. And that same meeting, someone had said something smart aleck about, well, why don't you dye your hair red? So I went home that weekend and came back on Monday with red hair. And I had forgot that I had an article being written and I had a photography shoot taking place. And so the author of that article tagged it Man on Fire.
That's awesome.
And I've tried to get rid of it some days, but I'm leaning into it now because, yeah, I don't have a filter, and I think our world needs it.
That's
right
amazing.
now in our industry. Hey, Cody.
Cody agrees that it's your strength. I think definitely true. I mean, there's a lot of folks in the CX space, Shawn, but none that I have met that really even remind me of you. And that's great. That's a compliment. That's I think it's so important that we are ourselves and that we bring our whole selves to what we do, because I think it's what makes everybody innovative and relevant and unique. So
absolutely.
I think it's awesome. So I want to go back to your Disney experience and something you said about how they put the customer first in every scenario. And another company that I think does this a lot is Amazon, and it's why Amazon's been so successful. And one of the things that it took me a little while to realize was that Amazon understands throughout the organization that it's not about one transaction, it's about the entire customer relationship. And that's why they make returns so easy, or they make refunds so easy, because they're okay if they lose a little bit of money on one transaction. They're pretty sure Dan's going to purchase from them 300 more times, which is true. Talk to me a little bit about the philosophy behind Disney. And I mean, because it seems so obvious, right? Focus on your customers. They're the ones that keep you in business. And yet not many companies are like Disney or Amazon.
And true. And to your Amazon thing there, Dan, what people don't realize, I think, Amazon doesn't sell a product, right? Amazon sells a service. They are a service-based company. And that's what they've done brilliantly. And the same thing, I would even say that's the philosophy that goes over to Disney. Although Disney is going to take over the world, right? I was listening to something the other day, driving here to Nashville where I'm at, and someone was joking. It was ESPN radio I was listening to, and they said something about how Disney encrypts all their stuff, right? So Disney's going to take over the world. The philosophy around what I loved so much when I was at Disney is that the guest, first off, we never called them a customer, right? They were our guests. They were our guests on property. They were guests when they came in to experience things. That the guest was always right. And I hear people say, well, the guest can't always be right. That's true, but you can always make the guest to feel like they're always right. And I lived in a role that was backstage. I was never front stage. I never had a client-facing role, and I was in finance. But I understood my role, Dan, to be one, that I was to create magical experiences. So I always thought of the 4-year-old girl or the 4-year-old pirate and the family who had saved years to come in contact with that experience. And I was going to do everything I could to make that experience the best that it could be. And I think that, to me, is truly the secret sauce for Disney.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And it's really understanding each and every customer in that way. And also understanding each and every employee, and that every employee has a role in the experience. You might be in finance and you might never actually talk to a customer, but that doesn't mean that your job and what you produce isn't a part of the overall experience. And I love when we dig in with clients on even things like invoices and contracts and places where we don't think we can create an experience, but we absolutely can if we empower every employee to really believe that they have an impact on the experience. And I definitely think Disney does that, calls everybody a cast member, even the people sweeping up, have an important role to play and understand their role. And I think that's absolutely remarkable.
And to that point, Dan, we talk, and I know you work a lot with C-suites and senior leadership. And again, common sense things to us, I don't understand why it is not common sense things to others, right?
It's why we're employed, though, Shawn.
That's right. If it became common sense, we wouldn't have jobs, right, Dan?
Yeah.
Yes, I was a backstage cast member. But one of the things that Disney did brilliantly, and I know Cody, who popped up there, lives in Orlando, is during peak season, we were required as salaried cast members who worked backstage to go work in the park. And I remember my favorite job was actually trash pickup. Because I could walk... Because I walked the park, and you had one of those, I call them the claws, and I just made sure the streets were clean. I call them the streets still, or the walkways were clean, and the crowd didn't have anything. But I got to interact with those guests. I would do an 8-hour shift doing nothing but garbage pickup, and I had a blast. Never in my life, in my career, would I have ever said collecting garbage is amazing, right? But it was the whole philosophy. Or Cody just wrote in there, choosing the correct cement at Epcot is part of the experience. That's right. Like, people don't realize that cement colors are the way they are, and buildings are the way they are within all of those things at Disney. And so my challenge to senior leaders is get off your butt and get out of your office. Go where your customer is. Go experience it. Go, we did that, Dan, at that payer that we both worked for. And I remember when we made them go through that experience, the CEO going, oh my God, I did not realize we did this to our people.
Yeah. I always recommend the same thing. Become a customer of your own company. I don't know if I've told you this story before, Shawn, but one of my previous employers, not the one we worked at together, but I'm going to still keep it quiet. I was asked to create a video for an all-employee meeting. So I got together with one of the younger folks on my staff who had just started, and we put together this video about the day in the life of a summer intern who was trying to launch a product at our company. And he had to go around to every department within the company to get approval. And he went to the brand team and the legal team and the finance team, and everybody was standing in their way. I remember there was one scene where the legal department handed over a stack of papers like this big to them and all that. And everyone is laughing at this video because, in the immortal words of Homer Simpson, it's funny because it's true. And the only person in the audience not laughing is the CEO. And I was told later that he leaned over to one of his deputies and asked, is it really like this? He had no idea. And the reason why everyone was laughing was because, it was really like that. And in order to get things done, there was you had to go through this gauntlet of people standing in your way. And certainly that's why I left healthcare, because I sort of realized at some point that healthcare isn't moving until somebody finds a way to entirely disrupt it, because they're too comfortable where they are. And the experience is terrible, but it's terrible everywhere. So it
Yeah.
does. So there's no point in switching healthcare providers. You're going to get just as bad of an experience somewhere else, and that really kind of bothered me. But I definitely agree. There's no reason why executives, as they move up in the organization, should become farther away from their customers. This is actually the opportunity to get closer to the customer.
Yeah, and you know, I'm really fortunate. I work with an executive. His name is Shawn Nason, and that's his mantra. Like, he rather fill his schedule with being with associates than sitting in a meeting. So, hey, Amanda, I'm so glad to see you too. They're bringing the college program back this spring. I know it's been on delay because of the pandemic. So reach out, Amanda. I'll give you any tips if you want any there too. So
that's awesome. That's really great. So, Shawn, I know that earlier this year, you also published a book. So talk to us about that. And I'm going to share it on screen here in a second.
I actually have a copy right here with me.
Fantastic.
And this is what your book looks like too, Dan, with all the Post-its. But Kiss Your Dragons. Yeah, radical relationships, bold heart sets, and changing the world. And one of the things we talk about all the time, Dan, in our work, and I know you talk about this, is shifting people's mindsets, right? And I talk about in the book, and I wrote it with two amazing co-authors, Michael Harper and Robin Glasgow. And it's a conversational book. So if you like to have an easy read, it's a conversation. You can hear from all three of our points of views. But, you know, mindsets change. And you can learn new mindsets. You can tweak your mindsets. The whole concept of the book is from a book called How You Train Your Dragon, or from a movie, How You Train Your Dragon. And the heart sets. And so if you go back and you think of, there was Hiccup and Toothless in this, in the movie, 15-year-old Viking boy who has been raised his whole life that dragons are bad and that you need to kill them. Yep. And at 15 years old in the forest, he's confronted with the dragon and he can't kill the dragon. And he leans into that dragon. And ultimately, if you go through all three movies, and when we say he leans in, we call it he kissed his dragon. He faced his fears. He faced things that he had been taught his whole life that were wrong and incorrect. At the end of the third movie, because he had done that, a whole society was changed. They used dragons to work with. They used dragons. They rode on them. Dragons were part of their society. That's a heart set. His heart set was that he could not kill him. And so take a pause and think, what if all of us in our world today, and we live in a really freaky world right now, right? Leaned in and I was good. I didn't say what I wanted to say.
PG show here.
PG version. We leaned in and we kissed the things that we fear. What would our world be like? And so I actually, there's a Sioux, Native American Sioux quote in the book. And I'm Native American. And it says, the longest journey you will ever make in your life is from your head to your heart. And, you know, I believe that. The longest journey is to get it from here to here. And then I preach a 3-point sermon. And my team, anyone that knows me knows my 3-point sermon. When you kiss your dragons and you're a leader, there's 3 things you need to do when you're a leader. You need to be transparent with your organization. You need to build radical relationships. Just don't sit in your ivory tower or in the what we used to call the crystal glass offices. And love people. If you don't love people, get out of leadership.
It's a good point. It's amazing to me how many people, and I saw this in corporate America all the time, the folks that got promoted were often the worst people managers, the people that people didn't like working for. And I never quite understood. And maybe this was because I had a reputation for being a boss that people did want to work for, but I never understood why that didn't help me as much in corporate America as I thought it might. It just wasn't a skill that was particularly valued.
Well, because Dan, that's where you go back to the heart set and mindset thing, right? In the business world, we have a broken system that is mindset driven because it's driven to business results, metrics. And metrics aren't bad, let me say that, but when you're driving to those KPIs and that's why you're making decisions, then you're promoting people who meet those goals. Where you're a heart person, Dan, I know you move from your heart. And people look at that in corporate America and some companies and say, oh, that's too soft. You shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
Listen, I will stand and preach it from the mountaintop. I disagree with you. I think if leaders learn to move from their heart, business results would just come naturally.
All right. So is this just coincidental that you became the man on fire? You mentioned you were trying to shake that, and then you write a book about dragons, and dragons happen to breathe fire. Is there a relationship?
Yeah. So we've not shook the man on fire thing. We were trying to, but now leaning into it. And actually, when we started the book, there wasn't a purpose. And then, of course, you also know that the name of my podcast is called The Combustion Chronicles, deals with fire.
Yes.
That we did not lean into that with the book. It literally became when I was trying to get my point across with the team as we were writing it. I said, have you not seen this movie, How to Train Your Dragons? This is what I'm talking about. And then that's where it came. Then we were like, well, then we've got to just make it a dragon themed book.
That's awesome.
That's where it is.
All right. So, Shawn, as you mentioned, we are living in I think you used the word freaky world right now. Things have changed over the last 2 years in a lot of different ways. Pandemic, social issues, all sorts of things. How have you seen it affect how companies approach customer experience? And what do we need to be looking for as we start planning for 2022?
Yeah. So, Dan, I think we in the industry that work in it better wake up and realize what's happening. I'm going to say that because no longer, in my opinion, is it about us going in and teaching a process or a method or anything like that, or for a company to say they do it to just check the box. And you and Dan, you and I both worked in healthcare. You know, health systems hire chief experience officers and then give them no ability to do anything. It's a check the box thing. And even some of the big healthcare companies, we have a chief experience officer, but we're not willing to do anything different. The last 2 years has shown you got to do something different. And experience is changing so dramatically that experience is now becoming purpose-driven versus over what I would call task-driven. Purpose over task. That, you know, and especially with Gen Zers coming up in the workplace, we do a show too on Fridays, Dan, as you know, Experience Friday Live. You've been on there. We just had a young lady. She's been on there twice and going to do 2 more, who is a coach to executives around the Gen Z. And Gen Z is looking for purpose. And they're looking to network with people who have purpose and companies that have purpose. And I don't think if we in the experience world don't start looking at it that way and get out of being driven by business, we're gonna see some big separations happening in the experience world.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I always like to say I blame it on the millennials first, although I actually give credit to the millennials, that they were the first generation that wanted to have a relationship with the companies that they do business with. When you and I were growing up, there was no way to have a relationship with a brand. You could write them a letter and maybe they'd write you a letter back. But now with social media, we can have, and we have the expectation to have a relationship with brands. Gen Z certainly picked that up, and I think even added in this idea of the social element or the purpose element, as you mentioned. And I think it's gone backwards into our generation, the Xers, who are like, yeah, it actually is pretty cool when a brand writes back to me on Twitter. I kind of feel pretty good about that. And so that expectation is growing. And what has always surprised me, and we talked about this before with the CEOs, is how hesitant brands are to want to talk to their own customers. Like, these are the people that we're in business for. These are the people that pay our paychecks, that keep the lights on. I think we should always welcome a conversation with a customer, whether they are asking a question, giving us a compliment, or giving us a credible complaint, telling us that we missed their expectations. I would welcome any and all of those conversations. And so I hope you're right that that this continues to be a trend, and that companies have to wake up to it. Because the other thing I would say that's related to this trend is that switching costs have become so low in almost every industry. You don't like your dentist? There's 20 others to choose from. You don't like your healthcare company? Plenty more that you can switch to. Car insurance, amusement park, movie theater, whatever. There's so many choices that we don't have to put up with a substandard experience. We could just pick up and move. And I'm not sure that was always the case.
Well, and what's interesting about that, Dan, is even with the healthcare, let's go back to the healthcare example, right? Like, we know you can only switch healthcare in America during open enrollment. You don't really have a lot of choice, right? All these little things. I've done some work with the Ministry of Health in Dubai. And so for a country that has 2 million citizens in it, there are approximately 200 insurance companies. And guess what? You can change your insurance every 30 days. So if you're in it and you don't like it, fine. I'll go get a new insurance company at the beginning of next month.
I'm sure that gives the insurance companies a little more incentive to provide a better experience, right?
Right.
So that's a great example. Hey, Shawn, we got to go because this is the fastest half an hour on the internet. But tell us how people can contact you. I'm going to put your website up there one more time, but how else can we connect with you?
Yeah, www.mofi.co or Shawn@mofi.co if you want to email me. And as well, I have my own ShawnNason.com. So would love to talk to anyone. And again, Dan, thanks. Love you, man. Love what you're doing. And again, go get his book. It's amazing.
Thank you, buddy. I appreciate you. And thank you so much for being on the show. And go get Kiss Your Dragons as well. In fact, you know what? We'll wait. Just go to Amazon or Barnes & Noble right now. Go put both of the books in your cart.
There you go.
Out, and you're going to have a fantastic reading experience ahead of you. So, all right, Shawn, appreciate you, man. Take care.
All right.
All right. And thank you for being here every week. I do want to announce that next week we are going to be on Friday instead of Thursday, because I'm going to be traveling next week. And we're going to welcome to the show Donna Weber. Donna is the customer onboarding expert, and she's the best-selling author of Onboarding Matters. So we're going to talk specifically about your onboarding strategy next week on the Experience Maker Show. So join us, same time, just different day. It's going to be Friday at noon Eastern. That's the 29th. We will see you there. Thank you so much for being here. As always, I'm Dan Gingiss, the Experience Maker. We'll see you next week on the Experience Maker Show. Have a great weekend.